The fourth tip of dealing with people's mistakes, errors, and sins stemmed from the way of the Prophet ﷺ is to adhere to the fact that people differ. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Some people can be addressed with pure logic, some can be addressed by telling them about the power of Allah and Allah's peace and blessings and making them fearful of Allah's torment. Some people can be addressed and they would probably be useful than other means. This all depends on how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with different situations. Reminding people about fearing Allah was one of the approaches with those who committed mistakes. Jundal bin Abdullah bin Jabari narrates that the Prophet ﷺ sent an expedition, and when they came victorious and telling the Prophet ﷺ how they managed the battle, how they fought against the enemies and how they won, and the Prophet was happy. The one reporting it was Osama bin Zayd, the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ, until this was abrogated. May Allah be pleased with him and his father Zayd ibn Haritha. How he led Osama as his own grandson, and when Osama was telling him, he was happy until he came to the part of the battle where there was a strong, courageous warrior among the enemies. He was fighting fiercely and killing the Muslims. So Osama said, I went to have a duel with him and we exchanged blows, and when the man felt I was able to kill him and to beat him up, he said, La ilaha illallah, the declaration of faith. This is a statement for someone to enter Islam. When this man said the statement, Osama was talking with pride and honor. I finished him off and killed him. Here is when events took another course. The Prophet ﷺ's face changed. And you killed him after he said La ilaha illallah? Osama said, yes, I did it to protect himself from dying. The Prophet ﷺ kept on repeating it. What are you going to do with La ilaha illallah? How did you kill this person? The Prophet was casting fear in Osama's heart because of what he had done. It is one means of dealing with people, and the Prophet did it accordingly for the people he was dealing with. In the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when he went to perform Umrah and they were blocked by the idol worshippers and the people of Quraysh, this was unprecedented as they were never blocked from going to Umrah and to visit the holy shrines. So they kept on sending envoys upon envoys to the Prophet ﷺ to mediate and to try and find a solution. And when one of them came, the Prophet recognized them and he said to the companions, this such person has love for Allah. Though he is an idol worshipper, he is the kind of person who loves Allah, gives charity and gives a sacrifice, but whilst associating others with Allah, ignorant and mushrik. So when the Prophet ﷺ noticed this, he told them to present the sacrifice we brought from Medina to show to them that we're not here to fight, we're just worshippers to do our ritual, there's no hidden agenda. The moment the man saw these sacrifices, the camels, the sheep, he immediately went back to the leaders of Quraysh, the idol worshippers, and told them, oh people, fear Allah, these people are coming here to perform a ritual. So instead of going there and trying to mediate a settlement and send him off back to Medina and back, the Prophet succeeded by knowing what type of individual he was in, changing his position and winning him over to his side. Likewise, sometimes it is wise for da'i how to speak to people. Some provoke you and try to make fun of you instead of reminding them of Allah, casting fear in their hearts. They won't be afraid of Allah as they're making fun of Islam, so you need to turn the tables and use a different strategy. Some may get intoxicated and party, but they may have a weakness. The weakness may be fear of Allah. You can always knock on that door and cast fear in the diplomatic way that would benefit them and your call to Islam. This was one of the means of the Prophet ﷺ in correcting mistakes and lectured Osama. And when the Prophet kept on saying, what will you do with La ilaha illallah on the Day of Judgment? This terrified Osama. He would never attempt to kill or harm anyone if he claims he is a Muslim, if it goes against all odds. The Khawarij, the followers of ISIS and these terrorist groups who kept to terrorizing people and killing Muslims, they're not real Muslims. You get some Muslims preaching about religion and you get the rhetoric is not correct. They are not true Muslims the way they look. As long as they have said La ilaha illallah, you must refrain from killing them. Also, part of reminding people of Allah's wrath and tortures is to remind them of Allah's ability over them. Ibn Masud Ibn Badri said once, I was in the state of anger because of something that my slave did, a mistake, so I kept on beating him up with a whip, and I heard a sound from behind me. Oh, listen, Abu Masud, due to the rage I was in, I did not recognize the person. When the person approached me, I discovered it was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, listen, Abu Masud, and the whip fell from the hand. I adhered to the Prophet's call, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh Abu Masud, listen, Allah has more power over you than you have over this slave." What a profound statement! And you think you're powerful and stronger than others, and you want to beat your children up, your wife, someone not from your country, an immigrant, but because you think you're a citizenship, you can assault him. So Abu Masud reacted to this reminder and said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Prophet of Allah, I make you my witness, he is free from the sake of Allah. If you had not freed him, Abu Masud, then you would have been burned by hellfire. Listen to this beautiful lesson by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Slavery isn't something that Islam brought into the religion. Slavery is something from Judaism, Christianity, in all different nations. Their sources of slavery was haram. Abduction is an illegal source of slavery. You can kidnap, hijack, and buy children from their parents, all legit. Some people cannot pay the money back, so you slave the money. In the West Africa, they took thousands of Africans in the ship to be sold and work as slaves. All of this is not permissible in Islam. There's only one source of slavery, and this is if there's a legitimate war between the Muslims and their enemies. Those captives, those who would be abducted from the war would be prisoners of war and would be enslaved. We have etiquettes of dealing with the slaves. You do not have the right to beat them up. You need to feed them. You need to clothe them from your clothes. They have dignity. They need to be treated well. They're human beings. If you have an accident and kill someone by accident, then you need to free a slave, expiate an oath, and so on. We can get slaves through one source, which is the holy war, which is obviously fighting in the cause of Allah, but we don't have any. This is only source. To expiate lots of sins, you need to free a slave, and this shows Islam encourages freeing slaves, not abolishing it, not preventing it until fighting for the cause of Allah is stopped. This is part of Islam, and the beauty of Islam is that it channels freeing slaves, dealing with slaves, and treating them with dignity and respect. The hadith of Mother Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ said, I was amazed for seeing people in the shackles and chains being dragged into paradise. Scholars interpret this by saying the people in shackles and chains are the slaves who are disbelievers, and they were enslaved and put in shackles and chains, and when they saw Islam in their households, they accepted Islam. Chains and shackles were the reason to dragging them into Jannah. This approach, casting fear in the sinner's heart and getting them back to Islam, or reminding them of the power and favours of Allah upon them, is a methodology of the Prophet ﷺ, which we should focus on. And really, all these things that I've said in these 8 episodes, make sure to really understand them and depict the message from it, the ways that the Prophet dealt with different situations, different scenarios, and how he advised them in a diplomatic way and in the way that was most suited to the situation. And he was the best of teachers, the best of speech, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll leave you here fi amanillah wa sallallahu wa baraka ala nabina Muhammad astaghfirullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.